You spend 7 years glamorizing something in your head, missing it, wishing it would come back. It finally returns, and all it does is kick you in the zipper. Thank you, Arsenal. Thank you, Porto. Welcome to the Anglo-Italian pod. As always, my name is Rory, and I'm joined by my very good friend,
Adam. And as the famous song goes, Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. We're going to Wembley. Que sera, sera.
Woo.
Rory, I'm in emotional mood at the moment. It's fair to say I went through 90 minutes of pain against Bradford City, but we got the job done. We're actually turning up at Wembley. First time Wycombe have actually gone this far in the competition, and I couldn't be happier despite the stress of work. So, Rory, I'm glad to be here on this pod with you this fine evening. But more importantly, mate, how are you doing as well?
I'm very good. Thank you. Despite this week couldn't have gone much worse if I'd have planned a terrible week myself. But let's focus on your good week, because I feel like I'm going to have plenty of time to moan about my bad week. Wycombe in a final, taking on Peterborough, a bit of a grudge match. They are in Wembley. This is going to be incredible.
It's going to be so exciting for the fan base. We haven't had a lot to cheer on based on our league performance, unfortunately. But I think the moment it kind of dawned on me that we were going to Wembley was when I told my little boy this morning that we were turning up at Wembley, and his face lit up. He was ready to go there. He knew what Wembley was, and I think that means I've done a very good job as a parent. That's all I can say. But yeah, I cannot wait to take him there. And yeah, there's so many stories about our squad. You know, we've got players like Freddie Potts, who's on loan from West Ham. He's going to be the next Declan Rice by all accounts. He's showing his performances. He's too good for us. Although we say to West Ham fans, he's not good enough and you have to sell him to us. So that's what
he's terrible.
Mean.
You don't want him back.
Terrible. You don't want him back. But the real beautiful story, Rory, I wanted to tell and share everyone is the story of Richard Kone, who we got from the Essex kind of leagues. This is the story of someone that was playing in the Homeless World Cup only 3 years ago, and it was his through ball that set up the winner yesterday for Wycombe Wanderers to go in. He's a kid that was basically without a club, pretty much turned up in the UK and just tried to get himself signed by a senior club. He went through the obviously non-league route, and he was suddenly picked up by the likes of Brentford and West Ham on trials. They tried to sign him, but unfortunately, due to permit issues, they couldn't sign him. So basically, he's been going through pub leagues. He's been playing in the Essex kind of leagues. And Wycombe kind of noticed his talent. We've tried to get him on a permanent basis about 2 years ago. Unfortunately, we had to go through a lot of legal permutations, and we managed to get him in January transfer window after we went through so many things, including deregistering from a pub league team as well, to get him to sign, because the FA wouldn't let us officially register him as a player until we'd done that. So we managed to go through those loopholes, and there we go. The guy could not be happier. The amount of tweets he was sending last night was incredible, because that, I think it was just that realization he's turning up at Wembley, one of the big occasions. It was so fascinating, this story. I can't give it enough justice, Rory, but all I would say is to listeners, have a look at Richard Kone. He's a fascinating individual and warm-hearted as well. So I cannot wait to see him blossom, because that guy is definitely destined for bigger things than Wycombe, that's for sure. Wow. But yeah, Rory, we've also got a really heartfelt story in Italy, haven't we, as well?
Well, exactly, yeah. The kind of loving and the reasons why we love football doesn't stop there. Now, there was a video that went viral last week of a 84-year-old Taranto fan called Carmine, who was, well, not only a fan, a super fan of Taranto, has gone his entire life watching Taranto. Now, of course, along with many other lower league Italian teams, the club is in financial ruin, and there's been talk of them moving over 280 miles away to play their home games because they weren't able to afford a stadium. The local authorities weren't allowing it. Now, there was an interview with him that went viral. It was really heartwarming. It was just really heartbreaking, the video, to be honest, where he was just saying, you can't take this away from me. Like, if you take this club away from me, this is the reason why I'm alive. I've gone to watch them every week of my life for 80 years. Like, you cannot move them away. You cannot move them away. Well, thankfully, the video going viral has made a huge difference. The club have given him the VIP treatment, and Brindisi's Mayo, which is only 40 kilometers away, so only about an hour, has said that they can play their home matches there, so he will still be able to go and see the games. And I think it's just really nice that there's a happy ending to this video, to this story, because it seemed like it was just going to be another horrible story about a lower league club. But thankfully, there's a reason to smile, and hopefully Carmine gets to see happy days or happier days at Taranto. But yeah, I just absolutely love that story. And I didn't want to talk about it until I saw it had a happy ending. I was like, I'm going to see how this one plays out before I bring it up. But thankfully, it is a happy ending. So yeah, we'll be keeping an eye out for Taranto's results, I suppose, and see how happy Carmine is going to be. But there is plenty to talk about in this show. There's plenty to cover. We're going to be talking about the Champions League, of course, talking about Porto and Arsenal. We're going to be talking about the Spanish champions taking on the Italian champions and why it didn't feel like it was that. We'll be talking about Inter and Marco Arnautovic making a huge difference. And the other game in the Champions League has now escaped me. We will be talking about what was the other game?
So we'll be talking about
PSV Dortmund.
PSV Dortmund, yes.
PSV Dortmund. I have done my research, listeners, I promise. That just slipped my mind, I think. We'll, of course, be covering the Premier League action as well, with Man City and Liverpool picking up massive wins. And then, of course, there will be the Serie A and Premier League previews and the Tiki Taka Toe quiz. So, guys, lots to get through. That was about a minute explaining what's about to come up, right? So, we're going to take a very quick break. And after that, we'll come back with the Champions League.
Hi, I'm David Wheeler, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
So, Rory, let's start off with the Champions League, and we'll start off with your very own Arsenal. The reason why we're doing it in this format is we need to relieve some tension out of those shoulders, Rory, because I feel there's a bit of a rant coming on. But let's start off by, what was your initial thoughts about the result? Are you disappointed, or was there a bit of naivety from your team in terms of the way you went about the match?
The result is obviously super disappointing, but not a surprise. I think when it was heading towards a 0-0, I was like, okay, good. 0-0 away from home at Porto. Like, even when the draw came through, a lot of people were like, oh, Arsenal breeze through this. And I was like, look, and I think I've said this in previous pods. I'll have to go back and check. I don't think I was ever arrogant about it. But this is a team that are very, very experienced in the Champions League. Obviously, there's harder draws, right? There's definitely harder draws. But there are easier draws, right? They're a very experienced team. When you look at the Arsenal, if you don't look at the name Arsenal and you look at that team that we had, the only player that had previously played in the knockout rounds of the Champions League was Kai Havertz. Every other player, it was their debut in the Champions League knockout game, right? And I think that is the difference that is where this result comes from. So I think the result for me isn't a massive surprise. What's annoying to me is the manner of performance. I just felt we were so slow. We played into their hands completely. Defensively, Saliba had a pretty shaky game. We weren't as solid as always. I think Declan Rice managed his performance very well, considering he was booked in the first minute. He played very well, but him being booked in the first minute, I think, does change a lot in that game, and his ability to quite control so much in midfield. I just think we were too slow. Martinelli was terrible. Saka was terrible. There was zero threat up front. This is the first time we've not had a shot in target in a game since 2021, I want to say, or 2020. It was just a bad performance, but it looked like it was going to be a bad performance that we somehow got out with a draw, but it just wasn't to be. And in the end, it was inexperience that cost us. Like, it was Martinelli trying that clever
audacious
ball. Yeah, like really trying a clever ball and not just clearing his lines, or not even
just
that,
keeping
just
hold
retaining
of it.
Possession has cost us in the end. And I think the only thing I can take from this is that the second leg is at home, which is a huge bonus. And I've said it before, this is a team that learns from mistakes. I feel like this team learns quickly. And I think if you look at in the group stage, we lost to Lens 2-1, right? It was, again, a lot of the players, their debut in the Champions League away from home, their first away game, and they go, and then we get them at home and we do them 6-0. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen with Porto, right? Lens are not as good as Porto. But the point I'm trying to make is that I think Arteta will look at that, and the squad will look at that and go, okay, this is what we need to do now. And they're very good at implementing a plan and learning from mistakes. So I think there's definitely hope is not lost, right? I think 1-0, we can definitely turn it around.
Sure.
You just better believe that the low block that Porto are going to put in for that game and
Massive, yeah.
the even more cynical fouls that they are going to fall down every time we get within 6 feet of them, it's going to be unbearable. But that is within their right to do. That is how they want to play the game. We need to get past it. And again, a lot of teams that we've played against this year have been low blocks. Last year, when we had an incredible season, we were just scoring goals for fun. Teams weren't doing the low block because they weren't that scared of us. This year, teams are more scared of us. They are dropping back. They are doing the low block. And we've now got to a point in the season where we're kind of good at breaking it down, or we have a way of breaking it down. So I think, again, it's another factor that there are reasons to be optimistic. And beyond that guy hitting a worldie, it's an incredible goal, right? We've got to say it's an incredible goal. Beyond him hitting a worldie,
of course,
we come with a 0-0 and nobody's really talking about it. They're talking about a mature performance in Europe. It's just that moment, right? But this is what the Champions League is about. It's about those margins. It's about those tiniest of margins.
All I wanted to ask you, and obviously this is born upon this kind of quote from Sergio Conceição. He said, they wanted to play, we wanted to win. Did you feel that the team didn't give enough respect to the opposition? Because it felt like, from the fan base perspective, and I'm not saying it's all fan bases, but certainly I suppose it's not helped by the media building it up as well. There was that kind of clip on TNT where they kind of interviewed some of those fans on their kind of plane rides, as well as being over there in Porto. They were already assuming it's going to be a whitewash 4-0, 5-0. They were talking these crazy results, right? But when you look at the kind of context of Porto have been unbeaten for 10 games, right? So obviously there was no sense of respect almost, because there was the one clip that I saw which was absurd, Rory, was Arsenal Fan TV, which I don't give a lot of respect to. But there's this one geezer that was like, they're basically like Burnley, but they're just a Mediterranean version of Burnley. I was like, Jesus Christ, this guy is not really appreciating, like, and Robbie kind of challenges him and says, look, this is a team that historically they've done well in Europe. You know, they've won the Champions League, they won the UEFA Cup. We should be giving them a lot more respect. And he said, well, Burnley, they've won a first division as well before. Like, should we be giving them more respect as well? It's just, yeah, it did feel like there's an air of audacity about Arsenal because of the results that they've been gaining in the last few games. And that kind of maybe boiled over in this match.
I think from fans, almost definitely. And I've said a million times, I completely understand why fans of other teams fucking hate Arsenal fans. I completely get it, because I hate a lot of Arsenal fans. We are loud. When we win, we let everybody know that we win and we're the best team that's ever been. And when we lose, it's the end of the world. And I completely understand why people hate us. But also, we're a club that gets a lot more attention than a lot of other clubs. And Muppets, like the people on AFTV and that fucking Lee Gunn or whatever his bloody name is, get magnified. Because for some reason Arsenal attracts knobheads, and people might include me in that bracket as well. I don't know, but we do have a lot of knobheads in our amongst us. But I think from the club there was definitely no air of arrogance or we're going to turn up and win this. I think Arteta, his whole game plan shows that there was no arrogance. It was let's get out of here with a 0-0. He knew that if we opened ourselves up and if we went for that, Porto would tear us to pieces. I think the whole game plan shows that Arteta didn't think this was going to be an easy game. He knew that getting out there with a 0-0 would be fantastic, and then we can do them at home. So I think the plan hasn't really changed, right? The only thing that's changed is that Porto's plan in the next game is going to change, right? They're going to adapt it differently. But even if we go 1-0 up, 2-0 up in the next leg, Porto won't change their game plan. Their game plan will still be catch them on the break. Yep. We will get a chance and we will be able to take it. And I think, look, if you look at early on in the game as well, Galeno, the guy who got the winner in the end, should have scored. He hits the crossbar and then the rebound. I still don't know how that didn't go in. Like, my heart stopped.
It's incredible, yeah.
Like, it looked like it was on FIFA and there was a glitch. I just don't know what happened, but it didn't go in.
Like the ball went out and it bounced back to him, didn't it? It was just incredible.
Insane. So I think, look, if you look across the game as well, Arsenal didn't have a shot on target. Porto dealt with our set pieces incredibly well, and I think every manager in the Premier League now is going to be studying how Conceição figured out our set pieces, because they kept Ben White completely busy with his disruptor role, and like they really dealt with us very well. So they took away one of our major threats. I think Conceição has done an incredible job there and studied and been like,
clever.
this is how we stop them, right? And then it is just wait for that moment. And there were so many players in that Porto team that impressed me. I thought Otavio next to Pepe. Well, let's just say Pepe impressed me, right? At the age of 42.
Yeah, sure.
Incredible. Just that as an athlete and as a mentally, he's just light years. He can still read the game so incredibly well, and I was really impressed with him. He managed to get Otavio. That was his Champions League debut, right? Mm-hmm. He played incredibly well. I thought the two wing backs kept Saka and Martinelli completely silent. I really liked Pepe, the other Pepe, right?
The other Pepe, yeah, exactly.
And Varela, the guy up front, showed so much quality. So I think there's a lot of players there, as there always is in the Portuguese league. There's a lot of players there with a lot of quality, where you're looking at them going, oh, okay. Weirdly enough, the one player that everyone was telling us to look out for, Evan Nilsson, was the one who was actually more quiet. But I thought there was a lot of individual performances for them that really stood out. I really liked the wing backs. I thought they did such a good job, and just they didn't allow Martinelli or Saka to ever be one-on-one with them. It was just constantly doubled up. So I think you have to just say fair play to Conceição. He absolutely got the game plan right, and for Arsenal, it just needs to be a lesson learned. And just, I think at the Emirates, I'm still not. I'm a bit pissed off about last night, but I'm not overly worried. Touch wood, right? I'm not overly worried. I think at home we should be okay. It's just a big lesson for the players because, and again, talking about the arrogance of the bloody media, at no point has any Arsenal fan I know said that we can go and win the Champions League, right?
Well, I've not heard it, but
Arsenal fan I have talked to has said that, right? Most, I think, sensible Arsenal fans have said quarterfinals would be pretty good, semi-finals would be fantastic, right? But you go on to BT Sport and they're talking about Arsenal as third favourites behind City and Real Madrid.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Don't look at even the name Arsenal. We've never won sod all in Europe. We've not won anything in Europe. We won a Cup Winners' Cup in the 90s. So it's not even like there's pedigree there. So then, okay, you're not looking at the name. Then look at the squad. The squad are all incredibly young and haven't played in the Champions League before. How do you think they're going to rock up and just get to the final? Like,
well, exactly.
It just, the arrogance in some of the media and the
it's the narrative.
Presenting
they're trying to set
the
a
narrative is just insane. And I like to think I'm a fairly sensible Arsenal fan. I do get pissed off about Spurs and United and whatever, but I like to think that I'm fairly unbiased when it comes to things like this. And I just think, like, fans on Twitter laugh at Arsenal fans because we think we're bigger than we are.
Well,
we're the third biggest team in England, right, behind United and Liverpool. But we've not won anything outside of England. So why would Inter or Milan or Real even look at us? Like teams that have won it 7 times, 14 times, whatever it is. I just think the presenting in the media has just been mad, honestly. And like they're setting the team up for a fall. Because what they do is they go, oh, they should be getting to the final. This team could be getting to the final. And then when we don't, we get to the quarters. It's, oh, they're a bottle job again. Well, it's not our fault. You set unrealistic targets. It's like,
well,
you know what I mean?
True. Yeah, no, I completely get it. I think,
like, even Arteta, he wouldn't say to the team, right, our target is semi-finals. He would say, our target is to win it, right? Because that's what you do.
Of course you do, yeah.
But in his head, and the players will know, that the quarterfinals would be a successful tournament for their first tournament in back. Yeah. Like, it fucking winds me up. It's really wound me up. And it wound me up more than the performance last night. Because I was like, it's just not our fault that you said something that was never going to happen. Like, I don't know.
Quickly, just to conclude then, Rory, do you think Arteta changes the personnel and the style of football, or does he keep to his philosophy?
Well, it'd be interesting to see what lineup he goes with. It depends on. We've got a lot of players coming back from injury now. Yeah. So we've got Yuri and Timber apparently just around the corner, which is going to be super exciting. We've got Zinchenko coming back. Thomas Partey moving on. We've got I think Tomiyasu's coming back soon. So we've got the squad is filling out a bit. I think Kivior, as good as he's been, might lose his place if Zinchenko is fit again, because it just gives us a bit more solidity in midfield. Kivior's been really good in that traditional left-back role, but I think he still needs time training up
to develop,
to get there. So I think it depends on personnel. Also, Gabriel Jesus as well. I think we might see the lineup that Arteta tends to use in bigger games, which is Jorginho in midfield and Kai Havertz up top to give us a bit of presence. Because I think what we missed last night was someone up front who could hold the ball up. Trossard didn't have a great game. None of our attackers had a great game. But Kai Havertz, you forget how physical he is, and he was just able to he is able to give us that focal point. So I think we might see him up front and Jorginho brought into midfield and just a bit more. That's tended to be the lineup for bigger games, and this is now a very big game. But it's 3 weeks away. It's now more important that we win the games between now and then, to be honest.
This is true.
We can think about Porto when we get there, I think.
Yeah, well, Rory, let's move on then, because the other game that took place yesterday was Napoli taking on Barcelona. Ended up in a 1-1 draw. Calzona was probably the happier of the two, given the context of how well Barcelona played. But we did see two great strikes, one from Lewandowski, one from Osimhen. So it's a shared kind of point at this point of the tie. However, obviously Napoli have to go to Barcelona, and there's a crazy stat about Napoli and knockout rounds. So when they've drawn the first leg of a tie in a knockout competition, they tend to lose. So they, in 6 occasions, they've lost it, and 3 of those ties have been against Spanish sides. So the omens are against them at the moment, Rory. Obviously, it's hard for Calzona to do anything because he barely had a training session. He even alluded to the fact that he was keeping it nice and simple. And obviously, you could see that the team didn't have a clue, really, in the first half. They seemed to be stuck with the ways of Mazzari. But in the second half, obviously, a lot of credit towards Calzona for the substitutions that he made. Slightly changed the kind of way the game was going. How did you see the game? I mean, personally, for me, I think there were some disappointing performances from a Napoli perspective.
I think, look, it's the play getting any performances out of these players at the moment when it's all been so chop and change is going to be difficult, right? And I know I kind of dragged Anguissa a bit in the last episode, but I think there's no form of consistency at the club at any level, so how can the players be consistent? But I think what is interesting is that they have kind of reverted back to the 4-3-3. They've gone for what they played under Spalletti and Sarri, and he's basically kind of hit like a restart and gone, because he was there under Sarri and Spalletti, but not the title winning season under Spalletti, but previously under Spalletti.
Yeah.
And he's kind of just gone, okay, well, when I've been here, we've played 4-3-3. You all know me. You all remember what the instructions were. Do that, right? And I think that's kind of just been because it was literally, he was still meeting dignitaries from the club the day of the game. He hadn't really had time to do anything. When Juan Jesus was interviewed, they said, "What did you do in training?" He said, "Some set pieces," and that was it. There was no time. So I think for them to get a draw against Barcelona is fucking huge. It's massive. And they can go to Barcelona now. It's not the new camp. It's the Olympic Stadium that they're playing in, right?
Yes, correct. Yeah.
So I think that does make a difference. Again, not looking at the names, this isn't the Barcelona that is Barcelona. This is a Barcelona that's a bit all over the place. It's a team that, if Napoli are ever going to go away and win at Barcelona, it could be now. And I think the fact that Calzona now has 3 weeks until the next tie, this team is going to be in a much different shape then, you would hope, than it is now.
Yes, true.
And that they would have developed a few more patterns, got a bit more of an idea. So I think this tie is really intriguingly balanced, because I think Barcelona, we've seen, are fully capable of shit in the bed. They conceded 5 to Girona. They've taken some big losses this year. They are perfectly capable of setting fire to themselves. So I think there's definitely signs of encouragement there for Napoli, but they shouldn't have been in this game. Barcelona should have won it in the first half.
Oh, yeah.
And it says everything about Barcelona that they didn't, right?
Yeah, I mean, for me, look, they really did have some intensity about their game. Pedri was unlucky with his efforts, and I think It almost feels like that's Napoli just didn't really know what to do with certain players, and it's baffling for me that Rory, whilst we're talking about Calzona and the fact that he's been brought in, you would have expected something in the background to have been planned out for this kind of game. Like you would have expected the analysts to be part of the kind of. This is the players you have to look out for. This is the kind of things that they tend to do. This is what they'll kind of shape up to do as well. And it felt like this was lacking. And prior to this game, Rory, as well, there was a piece in The Athletic about the Lewandowski aspect and how there's turmoil in the dressing room. He's not performed as well as probably anticipated this season, but there's been a lot of aspects that he's not been respected by the group, but also he also had words about Xavi and the fact that he changed the formation and said, as a team, we're going to have to work harder because I don't have wingers to supply me opportunities, for example. But I don't know if that was just being made a bit bigger than it actually was, right? Because you look at that performance and you go, actually, Lewandowski showed his prime there. He showed what a lethal striker he can be if you give him space. And Rachmani obviously loses him for that goal and leaves Juan Jesus with a difficult task of trying to cover him as well. So I felt really disappointed by the likes of Kvaratskhelia. Kvaratskhelia was really disappointing on a night, and that's the kind of game where you expect him to turn up. And I think the decision of leaving Zielinski out of the Champions League squad is going to hurt them. I think this would have been a perfect opportunity for a spark within that midfield. Obviously, we know the politics behind it. We know why, because De Laurentiis is a twat. But apart from that, also, it's just more the fact that they don't like the fact that there's a player that wants to leave. At this rate, there's probably going to be at least 3 that will leave in the summer. But I think Napoli are going to struggle in the next leg. I can't see them overturning the result and making it in their benefit. I think Barcelona are going to win, even if it's 1-0, Rory. I think that's going to be all it's going to take, and I can see them just shutting out the shot because you can see Christensen, the way he was deployed as well, was almost like I can be a backup 4th or 5th player in that defence. And the way they're going about it, I think that's what they're going to do. They'll shut up shop with players like Lamine Yamal, for example, and Pedri. The way they were going about their attacks, I'd be worried about Napoli. I think they need to concentrate on just being in the top 4, top 5 mix by the end of this season. That's the way I see it.
Well, I think the next game is basically a free hit for Calzona, like the Barcelona tie away. Like if you do something, you're instantly
amazing.
A god. Like you've beaten Barcelona in Barcelona. Yeah. I completely disagree. I think Barcelona will absolutely ruin this. I still think people are thinking about Barcelona as if they're a rational, functioning team and club, and they're not.
No, they're not. They're
on any level. And
they're far from it.
And I think at this, it's the battle between the 2 least functional clubs in Europe, arguably, at the minute.
There is that.
And I think Napoli somehow get through this tie. I can just see it happening. I can just see that they will, Osimhen or something, there will be a moment, or Ngonge or someone will come on and there'll be a moment. Because I think Barcelona are perfectly capable of screwing this up. And it's not at the Nou Camp. I think that is such a huge thing. I think it's such a huge thing. Because the players don't go in with that weight on their shoulders of, we've got to go to the Nou Camp and win at the Nou Camp. Nobody ever wins at the Nou Camp. It's like, no, we're going to play Barcelona, who aren't currently in their own stadium and everything's on fire, right?
Fine.
So I think it's like, I think there's a chance there. We'll see. I'm really glad that it's open. And it was really like aesthetically pleasing to see that Osimhen and Lewandowski scored. I was like, oh, the 2 best players on the pitch scored. That's nice.
Exactly. That's the reason why we wanted to watch this game, right? So that's it.
Well, that's it. You want to see, if you watch Lewandowski, you want to see him score. If you watch Osimhen, you want to see him score. And Osimhen only needed 1 chance and he did it. So he is getting back to fitness. It'll be interesting to see how often he can play, because he's still definitely not fit. But a big night for Napoli there. They were very lucky, but they got there in the end. But elsewhere in Italy, I was so looking forward to this game, and I had to convince myself that I enjoyed it, because it wasn't a good game. But Inter 1, Atletico 0. Oh my god! What on out of it?
It was tense.
It was very tense, wasn't it? It was very tense.
Yeah.
Let's just talk about Arnautovic, because I think it's an interesting thing about Inter squad, is like their depth is so good everywhere, right?
Incredible.
So I thought obviously they were really struggling to break Atletico down, and Di Marco was very tired, and Darmian was very tired, and they brought on Augusto and Dumfries, and both of them had such an impact. Like, instantly, Dumfries was absolutely just tearing into the box. Carlo Augusto was whipping balls in, and you could see, like, oh, look, they've brought off the wing-backs, brought on their spare wing-backs, and they've improved, arguably, right? Or they've got more energy. And it just showed to me where the depth in this squad is so good, right? De Vrij, a player who hasn't featured massively this season, has kind of been in and out, came in, did a really good job. And you're seeing the depth in the squad. Like, Fratesi comes on, looks really active, right? The only, although I had a few disappointing moments, but anyway, looks really active.
Yeah.
And the only area where they seem to have no real depth of quality is up front. And Arnautovic, of course, scores the winner because that's how football works.
Of course it does.
But it took him about 8 chances to get this goal, right? And that's the issue.
Yeah, I think this was maybe a bit of an own goal from Inter in not securing a striker from January onwards. I don't know with Arnautovic if I see him necessarily as a striker. I see him as a hard-working kind of midfielder or attacking midfielder, let's say. Someone that can kind of spin off, and he does a lot of that kind of chasing down. And I think that's why Simeone Inzaghi really likes him, because he does all the nitty-gritty stuff that maybe he gets as kind of similar or akin to Thuram in terms of that work rate. But it's that touch, isn't it? That clinical touch. We saw Stoke City Arnautovic turn up on the night, and you could see after the first chance where the ball gets played in from Çalhanoğlu, I think it is, on the left-hand side, and he kind of shins it off out, and everyone kind of said, you had the goal gaping at you, or if anything, control it at the very least, right? But there was a scene of like an Inter fan going, this isn't going to be our night. Like, you could see that they knew it wasn't going to be their night. And like you allude to, he had a hatful of chances, and it was only, 5th or 6th attempts when he
nearly missed the goal he scored. It was an open goal and he nearly missed it.
But he manages to get it in. That's what counts, I suppose. I was expecting personally Alexis Sanchez to come on instead of Arnautovic. And I think he would have added that bit of quality. Maybe it's just he sees that Alexis Sanchez doesn't have the legs anymore to do what he used to. But I think if you're talking about someone that can do the finishing to that kind of level, he is the best man for the job. But let's not hide away from also Arnautovic gets some important tackles in as well. He buys some free kicks as well. Yeah, I think that helped it. And I think obviously the big thing that came out of this match was actually, Rory, that I think Inter did a job on Atletico, although it wasn't very evident because of the way the match went on. They dragged out their players out of position. I think they really didn't come to grasp how technically well enabled in terms of that Inter squad is, in terms of that shape, the way that they managed to rotate players. I mean, you talked about De Vrij. There's opportunities where De Vrij was almost in the kind of final third, where that was insane. I think that confused the hell out of the players because they were trying to do a man-marking job, and it didn't turn out like that, because you ended up seeing the likes of Çalhanoğlu, for example, in the centre-back role and almost pinging the ball forwards to create those spaces and opportunities. And I don't think Atletico knew how to get to grips with it. It was really one of those where I think that was really clever by Inzaghi, and a lot of people after the game were kind of commenting about how his style of football is definitely appeasing. It was very fascinating to watch from that point of view. Obviously, it wasn't the best game, it's fair to say, and it opens up the tie for the next one, because I think this is not going to be as straightforward. I can see there being goals in this one, Rory, but if there's anything that's been taught over the few years with Inzaghi is he is a cup coach. He knows how to drill these players, even in worse circumstances. I remember, was it last season against Porto, where they had to go over there and do a job, and they managed to do the defensive work that every single one of their players played it out. I can see a very similar performance happening at the Metropolitano as well. But yeah, are you maybe worried about what Atletico can do in this second tie? Because I didn't see much of them offensively, and I wonder how they're going to do it in the second leg.
I feel like Atletico were never going to be attacking away from home in a Champions League knockout game. That's just not going to happen. No. So let's just pretend that's never going to happen. But at home, Now, their group wasn't the hardest. Off the top of my head, they had Lazio, Celtic, and Feyenoord, right?
Yeah.
But they scored a lot of goals, and they scored a lot
Mhm.
of goals at home, and they scored fantastic goals at home. Now, obviously, Inter are much better than all of those three teams that I've just put up. But I think at the Metropolitano,
Yeah.
that's going to be a rough game. I think it could be a very different game to this game. I think it could be much more open because Atletico are going to allow
They
it to
have
be a
to
bit
go
more
out.
open, I
Yeah.
think. So I think it could be a lot more open, which would be interesting because that obviously opens up more opportunities for Inter as well. But I think Atletico at home is always, it's going to be a difficult tie, and they have scored so many goals at home. I think a player that still, I think he had moments in this game, but again, Inter did deal with him very well. But I think, again, at home, it'll be a very different proposition, is Griezmann. I thought he showed some real moments of quality for Atletico, but I think at the Metropolitano, he's going to have a much bigger impact on the game and a much more, possibly cause a few more issues. I think this tie is like far from over, honestly. I think it was a really, like, tactically, it was an interesting game, I suppose. If you're going to sit and be like, let's analyze the tactics, it was very interesting. But to sit and watch, it wasn't a spectacular game. I felt like the Lino Souza for Atletico had a particularly difficult evening. I felt like he did not play well at all.
He
I
got
felt like
wild, didn't he?
Yeah, it really did not go well for him. And I thought the midfield of Saul, Koke, and DePaul. DePaul just wasn't really able to get that. We used to be much more creative.
Passes as well.
Yeah, I felt like he wasn't really at his best either. So I think Atletico don't play as badly as they did on Wednesday, on Tuesday, either. But also we have to say Inter weren't great. Like,
No.
They weren't great by any stretch of the imagination. They were too slow in the build-up. Their final ball was just terrible. Like, everything felt really stilted and really slow. And I think, again, this was possibly a moment of a team being like, "Oh, we're in the Champions League knockouts. Fuck, we can't fuck this up." And I got slight flashbacks to like old Inter where they used to get nervous, and it just looked so slow and so stilted. So I think a 0-0 here would have been perfectly reasonable. I think it's just that one moment for Inter. Like, obviously, towards the end, Inter did start to push, but I felt like in attacking wise, they just didn't have that fluidity or that speed that was necessary. So it was an off night for both teams, I think.
Yeah, and I think the turning point was that Thuram kind of injury as well, because I think up until that point, he was more of a threat for Atletico. They knew he was going to be a threat, but the moment he kind of pulls up, you could see there was a sense of, oh no, we haven't planned for this eventuality. And this was really difficult because obviously he was teeing up Lautaro for a few of those opportunities that you mentioned, whereby I think he overtakes or overdoes it with a few touches too many. For example, there was one opportunity where he laid it off, and I think Lautaro should just take it first time, as opposed to he kind of settles himself before he trying to. I think he drags a shot wide. And this was the thing. I think Oblak isn't in the best of seasons. He hasn't had his best season this year. So this was a perfect opportunity just to test him from distance. And I think Lautaro, the form that he's shown it in previous games that he can shoot them from distance as well. So, but also we need to have a word about Barella, that he had a fantastic game. Bastoni was fantastic in the way he marshaled that defense as well. And Çalhanoğlu as well. I mean, the balls that he was pinging about, and there's some fantastic stuff that he's come out with recently, isn't there, Rory?
There is an interesting quote, and I would love to get your take on this. I think it's really fascinating. Çalhanoğlu, I'm the best regista in the world right now. Rodri's second and Kroos is third. Months ago, I said I was one of the best deep-lying playmakers in the world. No one believed me. I know the qualities I have, and I'm not scared of anyone. No one scores goals like I do. They're not from 5 meters out. I score difficult goals, and I never make 5-meter passes. I try to send the final balls that lead to goal, but I can still get better. I've also grown defensively. I feel like his time with Zlatan at Milan might have rubbed off on him a bit, because that is some of the most big-headed. Now, look, Çalhanoğlu is an incredible player, right? And we'll talk about how true we think this is. But that is, for someone who is constantly burdened with self-doubt, right? I would love to have an ounce of that confidence of like, no, this is what I do. I do it well, and no one else does it like me, so shut up. I really do admire it. But Adam, we've talked about him for a while as one of the best midfielders in the world, right? Do
Yeah.
you think he has a shout ahead of Rodri? Is the only thing where I thought maybe you're getting a bit ahead of yourself.
I think there's definitely consideration to say he's one of the best in Europe at the moment. Whether it's within the register role, I don't know. And whether, obviously, like you say, his confidence is definitely there. But I think just to counteract that kind of quote, I've got a really nice one about him being a bit more humble than that quote in itself. And it goes with, I feel reborn at Inter. I went through a difficult time personally for a while, and they helped me here. They helped me mature as a man. Inter is something special for me. I can't explain it. It's just emotional. It's true I rejected Saudi offers. I love Inter. It's an enormous family. In the end, Inter had to decide, but I told them I wanted to stay. So there's the other element of it that I think since that move across the city, he's actually become a better player, and he's been reborn in this kind of new role that no one kind of foresaw. But the ability that he's kind of demonstrated over the last 3 to 2 seasons, and the fact that he's almost got as many goals as he had in a 4-year period at Milan kind of shows you how influential he has been. And I think he's very underrated personally, Rory. I think it may be an aspect that he plays in Serie A to a greater degree. But I also think in terms of ability, if you put him amongst a Rodri, you couldn't say that's a more perfect midfield central duo at the moment in Europe in that respect. I think, yes, there could be arguments for the likes of Jude Bellingham on his day, for example. And look, Rory, I'm sure you probably put your very own Odegaard sometimes into the mix, but I think
sometimes
the levels are Çalhanoğlu and Rodri are definitely at the top. It's just where you see them personally and fitting into your squad. But
I think him and Rodri are very similar. They are very similar players, I think. Or maybe Çalhanoğlu does try the kind of longer balls a bit more and does score more goals. But I think they're both very well-rounded, just incredibly well-rounded midfielders. We've said before that Çalhanoğlu does the defensive work. He does the passing. He does the shooting. He does the scoring. He does everything. So I think, he's probably not far off the truth. I just wouldn't quite have him ahead of Rodri. But I think Cruz now is a weird third for me, I'll be honest. So I'm not going to go through and rank all 5, but I think Cruz in his prime was like number 1, obviously. But I think, I don't feel like he's played that much recently. But anyway, an interesting quote from Çalhanoğlu. He has had another incredible season. He is definitely up there, and it was another great game from him. Some of the passes he was playing were just, oh my God, unbelievable. I don't know if there's a player at the moment who more makes me go, oh, when I'm watching football just from a pass. I just sort of go, oh my God. He just makes me audibly react to passes quite a lot. So I really do enjoy that part of his game. So thank you, Hakan. I really enjoy that. They might annoy the misses. But yeah, I really do enjoy that. So a great performance from him. Inter, they take the advantage to Madrid, and that is the important thing when you get to these stages. Elsewhere, the last game, PSV 1, Dortmund 1. We're going to do this very, very quickly. Luke de Jong with a penalty and Daniel Marlon opening the scoring. That's all I really saw from this game. Adam, anything to say about this?
All I can say is, based on the kind of summary of highlights that I did see, PSV probably unlucky not to have gone out of this tie with a win. Dortmund were pretty poor. Lots of reports in Germany about Edin Terzic and that potentially a bit like the Bayern situation that might see the door of Terzic. Rumours that the likes of Nuri Sahin might be kind of his replacement as a temporary basis. So it's not looking too pretty for him at the moment. Dortmund didn't play particularly well, but there's an element of they do this every season. They come to these kind of periods of time and they seem to struggle. But the fact that they're still in the tie, I suppose, says a lot, and they've got to do the return leg at Dortmund. So that's probably going to work in his favour. Whether he's there for that tie is another matter. We'll have to wait and see. And much like Thomas Tuchel's situation with Bayern, I wonder if he survives this weekend. But Rory, PSV probably unlucky. Chucky Lozano doing what he normally does, just turns up for these nights as well. So, I think you've got a few experienced players in that PSV side. In the PSV side, by the way, that are running away with the Eredivisie as well.
In the league.
So, at the moment, they've got that confidence. So, you know what? I wouldn't write off even PSV for this tie. I think they've got a chance still, even though it's at Dortmund.
Nice. Well, that is the Champions League action. I'm going to very quickly take you through the Cool Kids Club and the Even Cooler Kids Club. In the Cool Kids Club, Carabag this was incredible.
Wow.
In the
Carabag.
final minute of added time, I think it was. The 120 plus 2 minutes, they scored to make it 3-2 and go through 6-5 on aggregate to beat Braga. It was a hell of a finish as well from Ajunzada, I'm going to say that is. Ajunzade, incredible goal. And Braga had scored in the 115th minute, so it looked like they were going through. Karabag steal it at the death. Elsewhere, I'm just going through quickly. Sparta Prague have knocked out Galatasaray massively 4-1. Galatasaray had someone sent off again. Wow. They had someone sent off in the first leg as well. Roma Feyenoord is currently 1-1, so that's going into extra time as we speak. And Marseille have knocked out Shakhtar Donetsk 3-1. Aubameyang became the Europa League's top goal scorer this evening. Now 31 goals in Europa League. He hasn't actually won the tournament, but he has got the most goals, which I thought was quite interesting. And Milan, despite losing 3-2 away in Ron, do go through 5-3. Luka Jovic and Rafa Leao scoring, but it was a Bodigo hat-trick, 2 penalties that got Ron the win. But Milan won't care. They are through. In the Even Cooler Kids Club, very quickly, Adam, last time I saw Legia Warsaw, oh my God, Legia Warsaw absolutely shat the bed.
They're absolutely shattered. They're gone. They've gone. All we can say is we love the Tifos. That's all we can say.
Oh,
Did you see it?
They're so disappointing in Europe constantly.
They get to these stages, mate, and then it just collapses. There's just a pile of shit when it comes to these games. I think they probably just over-anticipated that they would do them over, and within 2 minutes they conceded. So I think the dream was over from that moment onwards, because then they conceded about 24 minutes later.
The second goal was an absolute disgrace, the defending as well. Just runs straight through the defence. Incredibly bad goal. But elsewhere, Bodo Glimt were knocked out by Ajax 2-1. Kenneth Taylor scoring in the 114th minute. A lovely goal that as well, by the way. But Ajax do scrape through. Bodo Glimt were down to 10 men. And Ajax were down to 10 men. Jesus Christ. Sutalo got sent off for Ajax as well. So, yeah, a lot of red cards in Europe over these ties. And I think there's no Italian teams to speak of. Not at the moment. No. Union Charleroi have knocked out Eintracht Frankfurt. I was going to say,
that's a hell of a result for Belgium champions at the moment, it seems like. So, or elect at least. So beating Frankfurt, that's a huge result, Rory.
In Frankfurt, god damn, that's an incredible result. Nice. Well, guys, as you can see, we are reacting live to the results as we're scrolling through. But we are good. No, wait, we need to talk Premier League. Do we need to talk Premier League before we take a break?
Let's go to break.
We're going to take a very quick break, and we'll come back with a very quick bit on the midweek Premier League action.
Hi, I'm Phil Brown, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And we are back. It is time to talk about the Premier League, and we have to talk about the worst week in history as Liverpool and Man City win. God, this week has been a kick in the dick. So let's start with Man City 1, Brentford 0. Every time I get my hopes up, every time it's 0-0 for a really long time, and I think, right, today is the day we get a favour. Today is the day that Brentford get a last-minute winner and Neil Mopai does something for Arsenal. But no, that robot, Ben, gave them the idea with the reset, and now they've reset him and he scored. And they've won the game, and it's really annoying. And Adam, how do I deal with this? It looks like it's over already.
I think this was inevitable, wasn't it? But yeah, given the kind of recent circumstances, perhaps maybe that Chelsea result is the kick in the arse that maybe Man City needed. Maybe it's that sense of realisation that they're not as good as they intended to be, and I think that would have been a bit of an awakening call for them. But yeah, Brentford, the way they were form-wise, they've been quite placid in that kind of middle of the park, haven't they? And none more so than in that particular goal instance. So, inevitable.
Christopher, what are you doing, mate?
Yeah, I know. And this is a problem, I think, for Brentford fans. They are a bit worried about their position now. All I can say is that hopefully this weekend they can make amends for that, right, Rory?
We pray. We live in hope. We pray that they can make amends for it. But I do have to also say, if you've not seen it, look out for the Bernardo Silva free kick, because it is one of the most spectacularly bad free kicks I've ever seen in my life. It is genuinely insane. So if you've not seen that, search it out because it's fucking brilliant. Elsewhere, Liverpool, they won. Obviously got the final this weekend, 4-1. Now, we wanted to talk about the fact they've got 11 first-team players out at the moment, and they've still won
Ridiculous.
4 of their last 5 games, losing to Arsenal, but winning 4 of their last 5 games. Adam, it has to be, like, you have to doff your cap to the fact that Klopp is managing to still get incredible results with half his team missing.
Yeah, and he's giving debuts to players that used to play with the opposition manager as well in Jadon Dance, who his father was Neil Dance, for those that wanted to know that. And yeah, I recall him being a
for those who want to feel old, that
Yes.
player you didn't think was that bad, Neil Dans, you didn't think he was that old, his son now plays for Liverpool.
Exactly. But yeah, if you look at the kind of starting 11, you go, Jesus, what's going on here? They kind of going for the full kind of EFL kind of treatment here by playing the kids for this particular game. But yeah, I mean, you've got to pay respect to Klopp and the way that he's managed to get some energy for this match and kind of revitalise the fortunes of this team, because they've got the core kind of element there, Rory. I mean, the likes of Gakpo, for example, Alexis McAllister. And actually, to be fair, Rory, we saw the best out of Harvey Elliott as well. Harvey Elliott filling in for Diego Jota. We saw him kind of almost adapt quite well to that role. I saw, for in particular, his goal, fantastic finish, but also the way he set up one of the opportunities. I think it's Gakpo's as well. But yeah, I mean, potentially, Liverpool don't have to worry on this form anyway, Rory.
Yeah. No, they're absolutely flying. I'm just looking through that team, and it's insane, isn't it? Bobby Clark, James McConnell, Jadon Dans. They've got your man Connor Bradley at the back, Kwanzaa at centre back, Kelleher in goal, and you're like, yeah, this is all youth products as well.
All promising players.
To Liverpool, they're absolutely smashing it. Like, they're just smashing it, and you think it's these results and these kind of things. Like, look, Luton at home is a game that Liverpool should be winning. Let's just have it out, right? Luton have been decent at home, but their away form has been pretty terrible, right? So it is a game that Liverpool should be winning, but to do it so handily and to do it with this many, like, kind of the players that are supposed to be the cover or the players that aren't supposed to be playing this year, it's just incredibly impressive, and it does make you feel like the fairy tale ending for Klopp is coming. And personally, if Arsenal don't win it, I would much rather have Liverpool win it than City win it, because at least it's someone who isn't City, and it would be nice for Klopp, I think. And there is a bit of a feeling. I think that loss against Arsenal has really kicked something in them, and they've been like, right, well, this doesn't have to define the season, right? And it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to. For Luton, no real shame there. My boy Ogbene opening the scoring, had Liverpool on the run for a bit. He is going to be even no matter what happens to Luton, this guy's got a future in the Premier League. I think he's been absolutely fantastic, and I'm really, really excited about him and his career. He's a Liverpool fan as well. Growing up, he was a Liverpool fan. He scores at Anfield. He seems like the nicest guy in interviews and stuff. I'm just super happy for him every time he does something. So really happy for him. Not so happy for Liverpool fans. But, we have to move on. I'm bitter, and that's fine. But the other Premier League news this week was that the Jim Radcliffe 25% buyout has been confirmed. It seems like the shake that so many United fans were twerking for never really existed. There was a few touches on the press release that I enjoyed. One of them was it being in the Qatari flag colours. I really enjoyed. They had that kind of maroon and white on the thing. I just thought it was quite a nice little... The pettiness... I really loved. Before we go through the talking points that we've kind of got down, I do have to say, and I kind of went off on Twitter a little bit today, a billionaire approaching the government to redo their stadium and renovate part of a city that he has promised to do at a time when the country, millions of people in the country, are facing poverty, like heartbreaking poverty that people are ignoring, right? And it's all because billionaires like him don't pay their fucking tax. For him to turn around and say, can the taxpayer pay for our stadium and our. I cannot tell you how angry I feel right now just at the idea of it. Fuck you. Fuck you. I honestly hope the whole thing tanks and the club goes out of existence, because for you to turn around and even have the gall to try and push that idea when the country is in the state it currently is and people are going through the situations they're going through, it is the most tone deaf shit I have ever heard. And I think it honestly is disgusting. I think there should be so much more uproar about this guy even coming with this idea. Like, it's just disgusting. And I think people for clubs that he's owned in Nice don't have many positive things to say about him.
No.
Like his track record with Ineos and this green thing, and the fact his whole industry is fucking killing the planet. There's just a lot of issues I have with this guy. I know he's not as bad as the Newcastle owners, right? I know he's not as bad as the Man City owners, but it doesn't mean he's not a prick, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I just had to get that out there. We can go through the bullet points, but it made me so angry. I just could not. If you paid your tax, the country wouldn't be in half the trouble it's in.
I thought the audacity of him trying to compare to other projects as well was just absolutely just mind blown. Of like, he's got the arrogance to just try and do it anyway. So, you know, he cited things like the O2, for example, the Olympic Stadium, all these kind of projects that the government have funded, for example, and not maybe had a long-term strategy for. He's kind of basically citing the same thing with the kind of, what was it, the Wembley of the North that he kind of phrased it as. Like,
the most cynical thing as well is to turn around and bring in the North-South divide. So not only, and this is going to turn into a fucking politics podcast now, but not only is it the fact that the North gets sod all fucking investment, because why would you invest in the North, to then use that as a guilt trip to get the government to pay for something that you don't want to fucking pay for. It is the most cynical shite I've ever heard. And it's just this desperate attempt to try and get the Northerners on side, get the locals on side. Oh, look, you know, it's the South that don't want to invest. The issue isn't the South don't want to build fucking Old Trafford. It's the fact they won't give us decent train lines. Like, it's the most cynical bullshit. And I just honestly instantly hate the bloke. I hope it all fucking dies. Like, it's just awful. It really, really annoyed me, obviously, as you can probably tell. So we're going to go through the bullet point while we might have some tea.
Yeah. So let's start off with this. So obviously his kind of long-term vision for the club is to be essentially the pinnacles of English and European football by knocking the enemy, as he put in brackets, the likes of Liverpool and Man City, called off the perch, as he kind of referred to it. Obviously, that wasn't the most controversial thing to come out of him. I think the thing that scared a lot of Man United fans was the potential of a refreshed decision on the future of Mason Greenwood. That obviously was something that I think Man United fans thought had died, and obviously is now being brought back to light, because I think the club's hierarchy, including Ineos, probably thought, do you know what, that loan spell has made it a bit quiet in the UK, and therefore there could be an opportunity to bring him back. And he did cite that he would approach it with Man United traditions and ethics. He was quoted here, and he'd have to sense out what the fans thought. Now, I don't think any of the fans have changed their perception, apart from those twats that you see on Twitter or X that kind of cause this kind of dilemma to say, well, he's got to move on with his life. That doesn't mean that kind of, that behaviour was acceptable there, and it's not acceptable now. And the fact that, you know, they kind of bring up this kind of position of, yeah, well, look, she's there, she's kind of raising their kids, they seem quite happy, you know, she's moved on as well, and they're obviously citing the aspects of why didn't she take it further as well if it was such an issue, for example.
They're all just incels in their bedrooms that have never even talked to a frigging woman. Like, it's just, I ignore those people online. But the thing that really annoyed me, again, and it was in the statement, was we will ignore the hype. We will ignore the hype around the story. It wasn't hype around the story. It was recordings, pictures, and I think videos, right? Or maybe just audio recordings and pictures. That's not hype. That's evidence that is admissible. Like, that is evidence. So that's, again, I think, an incredibly badly worded statement. And another thing where you're thinking, okay, what type of
moron
person is this who's just taken over the club? Because, again, just an instant PR loss. And just when you think like you said, that you had those incredible movements of like the Man United fans against Greenwood, the female Man United fans against Greenwood. There was so much organisation and made their message so clear. The idea that they think that just because I couldn't even tell you how many goals he's got in Spain, and I couldn't give a shiny shite how many goals he's got in Spain.
The Athletic like to record it, though, don't they? They like to remind us that he's still down there, which is really
the fact that they think now, oh, well, yeah, like you said, it's been 6 months, and people will actually just forget, and it'll just be like a bantery song on the terraces, but no one will actually care. It's just disgusting. It's disgusting again.
Yeah. But as you allude to, obviously there was the aspect of Sheikh Jassim's rival bid and the fact that they were celebrating with an open bottle of champagne at the Monaco Grand Prix when they assumed that they had taken over, obviously for the whole debacle to kind of extend itself, because they had to see off this kind of piece of work at the time. But then also he was alluded to around the Dan Ashworth situation, the fact that he'd been put on gardening leave, the fact that Newcastle demanded 20 million and he laughed it off, saying Newcastle, what are they thinking? You know, they'll be lucky if they get 10 million, essentially, is what he was quoted as saying. You know, they should be halving that kind of total, which is typical Man United way. You know, they don't get their way, so they'll just, you know, have a little hissy fit, and then eventually they'll just, you know, accept that they have to pay that price, otherwise they're not going to get that man. And that's where, you know, Newcastle United probably go, it's 40 million now.
Exactly. And you wouldn't blame him either. You wouldn't blame him all. You know what? You paid 80 million for Maguire, so this guy, I'm going to say, he'll be able to sell Maguire. So let's say 90?
By the way, we've got a copy of Football Manager now. That's what they'll do.
It's fine. Turns out the star system's pretty decent on it. No, I don't know. It's also really depressing that now, like, football fans are getting like really into like administrators and stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the idea of being a director of football is really appealing.
It's beautiful, right?
But I don't want to be following who's going from office to office. I feel like football's getting into a really weird place when we're like, oh, we've got your accountant, and that means that we're gonna, like, you know,
can you imagine
post
like Sky
numbers.
reporters outside the like office blocks or whatever, and it's January transfer window, and we can see it's Clive. He's moving from accounts from this club to this club. It's been agreed set fee. Jesus Christ! If it gets to that level,
it won't be that late. It won't be that long. It won't be that long away, honestly. But yeah, that's our take on the Manchester United takeover, and Jim Radcliffe could go fuck himself is basically the gist of it.
100%.
But there was nothing really to talk about in Serie A. Lazio have beaten Torino 2-0.
2-0, yeah, goals from our favourite friend Guendouzi and Cataldi, enough to see off Torino, and they did get a sending off as well. It was Gigi, was it Gigi? Gila, even, sorry. Gila, who got the second yellow card. So, puts Rory, I think, Lazio in a positive position now. They are only just behind their rivals now.
Yeah, sorry, they're only 1 point behind their Cross City rivals, 5 points off the 5th place in Bologna. Now, the interesting thing, before we go, and because we are talking a lot, the interesting thing is Italy, with the coefficient, are currently top and ahead for the 5th place, becoming the Champions League. The Premier League got too cocky again. It looks like it's between Italy and Germany as it stands. So Bologna could be increasing their chances of a European Champions League place. They'll just really need to hope that Inter, Milan and Napoli go as far as they possibly can, and Roma, in the European competitions. I'm Fiorentina, right? And Lazio, maybe.
Got to remind ourselves
all of the teams will go as far as they can in Europe. But yeah, an interesting one to keep an eye on there. I think Premier League are currently 4th in the rankings, or 3rd. We're not really
quite
close
behind.
to it.
I think they're quite behind at this stage, yeah.
So it looks like it could be Serie A, which is super exciting. But guys, basta. I think we're going to finish this bit, right?
Yep.
We're going to take another quick break, and then it's the previews. So we are going to preview the weekend after this.
Hi, my name is Dimi Konstantopoulos, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And we are back. Something keeps falling in the background. We are back, and it's time for the weekend preview. And we're starting in England, where, of course, all eyes are on Wembley as Liverpool take on Chelsea in the Carabao Cup final. We talked about it. Liverpool, massive injuries. Chelsea, incredibly hard to predict what the hell's going to happen. Adam, instincts about this game, I can't see anything but a Liverpool win here, I'll be honest.
I was going to say the same. However, we should probably pay a bit more respect to Chelsea of late. They're starting to pick up some form. Obviously, the result against Man City was quite decent. That's all I would say. If they can bring that form into this game, who knows? It could be a very open match. I don't think there's going to be a lot of goals, though. I'll be brutally honest. I think this is going to be a very tight 2-1 win for Liverpool. And I don't think it's going to be necessarily done in a straightforward manner. I think it could be a very late goal that secures it for Liverpool. But I expect Chelsea to give it a bit more of a chance in terms of like giving them an opportunity to win this actual game, because they've got nothing to lose, Rory, ultimately. I think the only thing that will defeat them is the tactics on the day. Obviously, they've had a show off between each other not so long ago, and it was pretty pathetic showing from Chelsea. That will probably play on their minds that they want to be a bit more respectful. So that's the way I can see it, Rory. But yeah, do you expect it to be more of a bigger scoreline?
I think Liverpool have been getting a lot of, like, if you look at their results, it's been like 4-1, 3-1, 4-1, 3-1, 4-1, 3-1. I kind of, I'm expecting a similar kind of scoreline. I think Chelsea will definitely get a goal because Liverpool, no matter how good they've been, don't really seem to be getting clean sheets at the moment. But I think it would be a fairly comfortable win for Liverpool, I'll be honest. In the Premier League, starting on Saturday, we have a lot of 3:00 kickoffs, which is nice. We have Crystal Palace taking on Burnley. Glasner, first game in charge for Palace. That's going to be exciting. Obviously, Burnley, utter shite. But Palace, this is a massive, massive opportunity for them to get a win. If they can't win this, I don't know if they're ever going to win a game.
It's true.
We have Aston Villa taking on Forest in a bit of a derby there, right? Midlands derby. Ooh, I feel like it's kind of a derby, isn't it?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah. All the Midlands teams I just put together and go, they don't like each other. I'm pretty sure Villa and Forest don't like each other. That should be an interesting game. Unai Emery linked for the Bayern Munich job this week.
Wow.
Mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Another 3:00 kickoff. We have Manchester United taking on Fulham. We'll see if Dan Ashworth is able to get the new director of football a bounce and get Manchester United continuing on this great run of form. Of course, Højlund scoring in his last 6 games. Can he make it 7? Will be fascinating to see. Fulham away from home have been pretty terrible, so I would expect United to get a decent result here. And the last of the 3:00 kickoffs we have on the Saturday, we have Brighton taking on Everton. Everton looking more and more in trouble as the weeks go by. Brighton, fresh off a pretty convincing win from the back of my mind. 5-0 against Sheffield United. I feel like that could be a similar scoreline there. Later on Saturday, we have Bournemouth hosting Man City. Praying for an Andoli Iraola miracle here. I think this could be a difficult one. Bournemouth at home have been pretty decent, but we know that Man City are ultimately going to win. And then, not controversially, not in the Newcastle United's time slot.
Oh, wow.
The population in Riyadh are going to be rioting, and they're going to have to stay up later to watch the game. 9:00 on Saturday, or 8:00 in the UK. Arsenal taking on Newcastle. We've gone from one incredibly cynical team in Porto to probably an even more cynical team in Newcastle. I'm just praying we beat them because their fans are horrible online. On Sunday, we have Wolves taking on Sheffield United. Sheffield United will definitely lose.
Yeah, of course.
And on Monday, we have West Ham taking on Brentford in 2 teams that cannot buy a win at the moment.
No.
How do you see West Ham? Could they get a win here? They need something.
This is going to be interesting. Both sides not in particularly great form. I think I personally see Brentford getting a result. They always seem to get more than just a point when it comes to this fixture. West Ham they seem devoid of any confidence, Rory. That's the only thing that I get the feeling of. They just seem terrible at the moment. Despite the quality, I would say arguably West Ham got probably better quality than their counterparts. I just think, look, Thomas Franks is going to know this is a really critical game. Given that West Ham aren't in great form, they've got to go for it. So I think this is going to be a win for Brentford. It might not be a spectacular game, but I think it could be one of those that, Rory, it could be a 1-0 or 2-0 win for Brentford. But let's wait and see.
And any fans, if I inadvertently upset you by calling your team shite as I ran through that thing really quickly, I apologise, but the chances are your team are shite. Adam, let's go through Serie A. What have we got to look forward to this weekend?
Let's start off. If you're listening to us on Friday evening or Friday in general, we have got the first fixture, which is Bologna taking on Hellas Verona. Rory, Bologna have a great opportunity to extend their kind of points tally to cement that at least fifth spot for a few days. And Hellas Verona are in form, so I don't think it's going to be plain sailing. However, yes, I expect Bologna, the way that they're playing at the moment, I think that could be an easy victory for Bologna, but we'll wait and see. We'll move into Saturday's fixtures. A bit of a 6-pointer here, Rory, because we've got Sassuolo taking on Empoli at 2 p.m. Massive game for both clubs, in particular Sassuolo, who can't seem to buy a win at this moment in time, but Empoli in good form with David Nicola at the helm. We'll move into 5 p.m. We've got Salernitana taking on Monza. All I can see is Monza winning here, Rory. Salernitana in bad and dire straits at the moment. And then we move into 7:45 kickoff, which is Genoa versus Udinese. Now, we would normally joke about this, Rory, and say Udinese get a draw. I think Genoa is going to win this one, but on a more somber point, we did see midweek the announcement that Gerard Deulofeu may not be able to come back from his injury and he may have to retire. Rory, quick word, Deulofeu. I'm gutted because the form that he was demonstrating at Udinese was so fantastic. I thought he was kind of reborn as a player, showed that promise that he showed all those years ago at the likes of Watford, Barcelona and Everton to a degree, I would say. Probably more Watford and Barcelona.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, disappointing, isn't it, to see his kind of career potentially end in this manner?
Yeah, always just a really solid player, always chipped in with more goals than you expected. And I just remember that I had him in Fantacalcio for like 2 years in a row. And he was just my ace in the pocket. Like every so often he'd just play and he'd get like 2 goals or a hat trick, or he'd just like score a screamer or something. You'd be like, oh, I fucking love this guy. This is why I bought him. Just a really pleasurable player to watch. So it's really gutting to see that he might have to retire. We hope that he doesn't have to. We hope that we see him back on the football pitch. But if he doesn't, we hope that you enjoy retirement, Gerard, and that you are able to kind of, stay in the game in some capacity. You've given us some great moments, and Udinese fans will definitely miss you because they could do with you now, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's such a disappointing bit of news that we heard over the week anyway. I'm going to move into Sunday's fixtures now, Rory, and I don't know if you saw Massimo Allegri's leaked tactics or training regime that he had over the week. So he's doing 2 sets of teams. One was a 4-3-3 formation with the likes of Vlahovic, Chiesa, and Yildiz in one team, and on the other, he had the likes of Timothy Weah and Kostic. And they were supposed to be the wing backs crossing, but I couldn't work out who was the target man. They didn't have a target man. So therefore, I don't know what Massimo Allegri was trying to achieve. But anyway, Rory, Juventus have got Frosinone. That's the 11:30 kickoff. Obviously, they need a win to get back any hopes of the Scudetto race. Well, let's see. I'm expecting there to be a potential draw here, Rory, personally. That would be quite funny. We'll move into 2 p.m. and we've got Calgary taking on Napoli. Must-win game for Calgary, but obviously Napoli with Calzona. We'll see if he can get something out of this team. I'm sure he will, Rory, and I'm sure the quality will tell on the day. We'll move into 5 p.m. Lecce take on Inter at home. This could be an interesting match, Rory, because both sides are picking up some decent form. Obviously, Inter running away with the league at the moment, but Lecce won't be easy down the south there. But the big game, Rory, is 7:45 on Sunday. AC Milan taking on Atalanta. I did mention about Atalanta's run-up, and this is the start of it. So they take on Milan. Obviously, we joked about De Ketelaere potentially getting a goal here. But how do you see this game pan out? Because obviously Milan will be hurting from last Sunday's outing against Monza. Atalanta in good form themselves. So do you think Atalanta can cause a shock here?
I think they can, but history is not on their side. In the last 2 seasons at the San Siro, they've lost and not even scored a goal. So their record at the San Siro isn't great. In their last 9 meetings against Milan, they've only won 3. So I think Atalanta historically haven't done fantastically against Milan. That being said, this Milan is incredibly unpredictable, incredibly inconsistent, incredibly leaky at the back. And Atalanta have been scoring quite a lot. I think this game's going to be like a 3-2, 4-3 kind of goals everywhere. But I do think I'm going to back Atalanta to get the win. Milan have played midweek. Atalanta haven't. I think Atalanta could get the result here.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you've seen the defending from last weekend, I don't think that's going to improve. And Atalanta, like you say, Rory, in free goal scoring mood at the moment. So if you've been listening to us quite well, well done. You will know that Torino and Lazio play tonight. They also take on some fixtures on Monday evening. So the first one is Roma at home to Torino at 5:30, and then 7:45 we've got Fiorentina taking on Lazio. And Rory, that's going to be a bit of a banger, I'd say, but that's where I'm going to end it. So that's your
Beautiful.
weekend's results or fixtures for this weekend in Serie A.
And I cannot wait to talk about it all on Monday. I cannot
Of
wait.
course.
But
Yeah.
we are going to take another break. We're spoiling you with these breaks today, listeners. So many breaks.
Bet you're
And we're
grateful.
going to come back with Tiki Taka Toe. See you there.
My name is Massimo Morales, and you are listening to Anglo-Italian podcast.
And we are back. It's time for the Tiki Taka Toe quiz. And in the interest of speed, we've got the board already on the screen. It's right here, guys. You can see it. For the people who aren't watching online, we've got along the top Sheffield United, Liverpool, and Spurs. And along the left, we've got Scotland, West Ham United, and Netherlands. Tricky.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to buy myself time to think of players. Right. Adam, I think I went first last time, so you get to go first.
Cool, thank you. So let's go with Sheffield United and Scotland, and I'm going to go for John Fleck.
Fleck. I apologise for that terrible Scottish accent, but John Fleck, there he is. I'm going to go Liverpool and West Ham, and I'm going to go for Mascherano.
Very good shout. Well done there, Rory. We'll go with Liverpool and Scotland. Andy Robertson.
Robertson. I was so close to doing another Scottish accent then, but I thought I can't do it the whole way through. I can't commit to it. So I'm going to go, Tottenham and Scottish. Tottenham and Scottish. This feels like it shouldn't be this hard, and there's probably someone I'm missing who's obvious. But in the Premier League, Tottenham and Scottish. In the Premier League, Tottenham and Scottish. Just, you don't have to obviously say it, but is there an obvious one I'm not thinking of?
There is one. It depends on how far back you can remember him, but he was a good player for a different club as well, if that helps.
Right, okay. In the Premier League?
In the Premier League, yeah. Premier League era. It's not the most obvious, let's put it that way.
Well, that means you've got one, so I've got to try. Fuck. I try not to pay attention to Spurs players.
Let's put it this way. I don't think there's been many Tottenham players
No, I don't think
been
there's
about
been
in the Premier League era. That's how difficult this is, but it just happens to be that one player that I do know has played for Spurs and has played for Scotland as well.
Honestly, no one's coming to my mind. The only one's coming to my mind is like Colin fucking Hendry or something, but I know he didn't play for fucking Spurs.
When I say it, you're going to be kicking yourself.
Fucking Simon Davies as well. Fuck it. I can't think of fucking anyone. I'm just going to have to throw it a little bit. Okay, I'm going to bank on the fact that you don't know anyone, even though I know you do. And I'm going to go for West Ham and Spurs, and I'm going to go for Defoe.
Good shout. Well done. So, hopefully, Rory, this kills the tie off. So it's Spurs and Scotland, Neil Sullivan.
Oh, yeah, I was never getting that. Not in a million years. Yeah, absolutely fair play.
I'll be brutally honest.
That guy was English.
I don't think there's been many Spurs and Scottish players that have played in the Premier League era, should I say. I'm going to try and bring it up, Rory. The other one you could have had was Alan Hutton. Colin Calderwood is another one. But otherwise, you're going pre that time. There was a young player that I recall, Jordan Archer, as well. It's one of them.
No, I feel like you're much better at this game than me. Absolutely fair play. Neil Sullivan, bloody hell. I never thought that guy was Scottish. Anyway.
Well, he wasn't, was he, technically?
No, well, that's what me. Not really. Anyway. Good. Well, congratulations, Adam. That's a cracking win. Fair play.
Thank you.
Good. Well, listeners, thanks for joining us. As always, please do give us a rating on your chosen podcast app of choice. Leave us a comment if you're feeling particularly angry, happy, I don't know,
any of the above,
melancholic about this episode. However you feel, leave us a rating. You can find us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram and TikTok at Anglo-Italian Pod. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, please. And you can find us on YouTube every Monday night at 8:30 GMT for our live Monday night Euro review show, where we review all of the Premier League and Serie A action. It's always great, every single time, without fail, so we will see you there. Adam, anything to say before I send these people home with a quote that I now need to get on my phone?
Well, I'll try and drag it out for you, Rory. Hope you have a good weekend, and we are hoping that we've got an interview lined up with someone that we've been trying to get on the show for a long, long time. Me and Rory will tell you after this kind of interview how long it's taken us to get him on to do just an interview. But you will be spoiled because this guy has got a fascinating background. You will remember him as well. He's had a number of clubs in both Serie A and the Premier League, so that should give you a bit of an appetite for who we've got coming on the show. But Rory, with that, we'll send off the listener with your quote now.
I am absolutely praying that this gets pulled off, by the way. And we're just going to leave with the Deulofeu quote, really. It's months that I know there's a chance I might never play again. I can't do what I love for a long time. It's been more than a year now. You can't imagine what I'm going through. I'm trying everything to come back, but I've accepted the idea that I could also not play again. Deulofeu, we hope to see you again soon, and our thoughts are with you. Guys, we will see you on Monday. Arrivederci, ciao, a dopo.
Ciao, ciao.